Okay, I think we'll get started. I want to thank everyone for joining today. My name is Wade Wyant with Sunflower Labs. Today we're going to be talking about a very front of mind, white hot topic that, in case you've been living under a rock, you probably know that the US tariffs that were officially announced earlier this year have started to take effect, and we're starting to see some initial outcomes and reactions globally. So today what we're going to talk about is how you as a manufacturer, as a small to medium-sized business, or even an enterprise, can ready yourself from an operational standpoint for what may fall out from these tariffs, both positively and negatively, and take advantage of this time, because I do feel strongly, and we do here at Sunflower, that this is an incredible opportunity for businesses. So with that said, just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. All lines will be placed on mute. Please use the chat feature to ask any questions during the presentation, and we will select a few questions, time permitting, after the presentation and answer them. For those questions not selected, we will certainly reach out via email or phone to address those if they're still top of mind with you. So real quickly, our agenda today in our second Lunch and Learn webinar that you're all attending, we're going to talk very briefly about who we are here at Sunflower Lab. We'll talk about at a very high level. We'll just explain what these U.S. imposed tariffs are. We'll talk about some potential outcomes. There's positive and negative outcomes for U.S.-based manufacturers, suppliers. We'll break it down all the way through that supply chain and what it could possibly mean for you. And then how do we take advantage of what we feel is an opportunity here, right? What are the areas that manufacturers can improve to be ready for both positive and negative outcomes? And then we'll focus on one key use case, which we feel is a really great place to start if you're looking at improving operationally. And then we'll have some final thoughts, wrap up, and hopefully time permitting, we'll take a few questions. So who is Sunflower Lab? Well, we are a US-based IT consultancy. We're headquartered in Columbus, Ohio. We've been around since 2010. We have, as you can tell, some more than adequate coverage from a national basis, as well as a development hub in India. We're an AWS Cloud Consulting partner. We're also a partner of PTC. PTC technology is what really drives a lot of the solutions that we're going to talk about today. And interesting to note, if you take a look at the three logos there to the right of Amazon, those are independent rating services that rate us very highly. And I would encourage you to explore that website and take a look at some of the stellar reviews that we are getting. So let's get started. I will say this, the purpose of today's webinar is not to be a history lesson or to teach economics in trade or tariffs, not at all. But for some that might not entirely be up to speed on current events or might have slept through a few of those economics classes in college, we'll start off here with a quick review. What is a tariff? So a tariff is simply by definition a customs tax on an imported good that's levied by a government. So for instance, in its simplest form, an example would be I import a widget from you, you being the neighboring country, and on top of paying for that widget, I'm also taxed by my government additionally for that widget in the form of a customs tax or tariff. Now the theory here by the importing nation is that you'll be conditioned as a business owner to at least consider a cheaper alternative maybe in your company looking inward to your manufacturers. And it's almost always meant to protect or stimulate a certain nation's industry as a strategy, In the case of steel and aluminum tariffs that were recently imposed, it would be those respective steel and aluminum industries that we are looking to give some protections to and help them grow. So historically speaking, tariffs have been traditionally around 5% mark on average throughout history, and in terms of additional tax. But in March 1st to be exact, this year, the Trump administration leveled a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. So that gives you a little bit of perspective in what we're dealing with here. So when we talk about these tariffs, there's positive and negative outcomes. And these can be felt immediately or they can evolve over time. What we're seeing is since March, they've slowly evolved, and now we're starting to see what some clarity in terms of these outcomes. So depending on your position in the supply chain, your industry, or more importantly, your ability to adapt due to preparedness for potential material changes to your business or industry, it is going to affect you differently. So as you can tell, up and down here, we're starting off with manufacturers, and we're going all the way to the consumer level in this example. Let's look at some of these outcomes that are possibilities as a result of this, and look at those different types of impacts. So I think for the sake of an example, why don't we just focus on these steel and aluminum tariffs, since they're the ones that seem to be getting the most press, and they've been enacted for the longest time. So manufacturers, let's start with that, like steel and aluminum companies, right? They're the ones that initially these tariffs are being directed towards from a protection standpoint. They may see a positive bounce from the tariffs. So in theory, they're going to get renewed demand. Companies look to buy here in the US as opposed to abroad. So we're already hearing stories of steel manufacturers that are opening up plants that have been shuttered for 5 to 10 years, rehiring some of their workers that have been laid off and have had to find other work over the last few years. So we're seeing that positive bounce. From a supplier standpoint, suppliers to maybe automobile manufacturers that use these materials heavily and buy from manufacturers, they might see a different kind of outcome. They might feel some pressure to pass along the higher acquisition prices from the raw material manufacturer, and they've got a decision to make. Will they potentially pay for these domestic materials and take a lower profit, or do they pass those along down the line? And so then in the middle there, you've got really those, the automobile manufacturers themselves, right? And they are faced with a higher cost to produce an auto based on higher raw material costs from those suppliers. And they might elect to raise the prices to their dealers or eat some of the higher costs as well. And what we saw yesterday in GM's numbers, and for those of you that didn't see that, the stock took quite a hit there during the trading day, as their guidance and estimates were much lower than what they previously thought. And they did mention the impact of the tariffs quite often in terms of their forward outlook. And then finally, let's talk about us, right? We're the consumers, so we're really at the bottom. So we'll most assuredly experience an increase in retail price and perhaps less financial or promotional incentives to buy. So perhaps then using this automotive scenario, perhaps in that Chevy Labor Day sales event, which is going to be coming up in the next month or so, won't be so spectacular as it has been in the past, right? Maybe that retail price will be pushed up. Maybe those incentives to the dealers and the dealers passing it on to potential buyers won't be as attractive as they've been in years past. So all these potential outcomes mean one thing for these businesses along this chain. They must prepare themselves for changes in the business and be able to react to the overall global climate changes from a business standpoint. And whether manufacturers and suppliers see increased demand due to a disincentive to purchase overseas, or whether they see order levels drop due to price increases, they must be prepared to take care of their customers with higher levels of service. That includes on-time delivery and high quality. If you are forced or you make a conscious decision as anyone along this chain to raise prices and take a dent in profits, or from that standpoint, you're going to need to give something back to those customers to justify those price increases. And really, one of the easiest ways to do that is really improve on your customer delight, if you will. So, establishing operational efficiency, of course, then helps ensure that material changes to the business can be weathered over time, and organizations can come out of this on the other side, obviously better. So the big question you're asking out there is how? How do we do this, right? How do we react to this and improve? If I've only slightly addressed operational efficiency in the past, excuse me, then what is that path to get started, right? How do I improve on, maybe I've spent a little bit of time and money on addressing these things operationally, and I've got a lot of different excuses as to why I haven't really adopted a clear strategy. Where do I start? How do I do it? Well, smart manufacturing, and I'm sure most everyone on the call today is familiar and comfortable with that term. It's a discipline that's rapidly being adopted by manufacturers in North America. So much so that here at Sunflower Lab, we're creating a practice around it. You might have heard in Europe, Industry 4.0, or the Made in China 2025 initiative in China. Those are all based on the same type of ideas that we have in North America, where we've labeled it smart manufacturing. And what smart manufacturing really does is it enables information across the entire supply chain to be available on demand and in real time whenever it's needed. So that gives us transparency and insight into the business. And this is done through a combination of analytics, Internet of Things solutions. You probably hear IoT being bantered about quite a bit, as well as artificial intelligence, AI, and augmented reality, AR. And those solutions really form a majority of the core. So committing to a smart manufacturing journey will enable manufacturers to do a lot of things that I've listed here. Create real-time operations visibility to eliminate inefficient production runs and order increases, leverage predictive maintenance solutions on production floor assets, thereby eliminating lengthy downtimes, and create notifications and alerts that are triggered by changes in device connectivity within the factory. I mean, those are just a few from an operational standpoint that can be gained. So again, where do we start, right? We have advised our clients and our prospects to really take the stance that the best way to start is probably the use cases that really are established, use cases that deliver the highest ROI. That's our guidance that we give to our customers. So that in mind, while smart manufacturing is constantly developing, there are very few mature and proven ones that have delivered huge ROI for manufacturers. And in the interest of time, I think what we're going to do today is just focus on the one that strikes a chord with many, and that is predictive maintenance. Now, many manufacturers adopt a reactive plan to address when a machine goes down on the production floor. The plan usually consists of the following, and I'm oversimplifying here, but 1, machine goes down. 2, we assess the issue. 3, we fix it. So that sounds simple, right? Unless, let's just say that fix takes 12 hours of labor. Okay, machine's down. We are creating nothing at the time. And a custom part that we find out that we need is only made by one supplier. And it takes 2 weeks to arrive to your plant. Now that's 2 weeks or more of production down, right? Now that's easy to absorb for a large-scale enterprise manufacturer. They can rebound from that pretty easy. I mean, they've got inventory, say, globally that they can ship, from other warehouses, other DCs. They can ship from, ship from those other DCs. They can also turn on other lines, and they have multiple lines on the shop floor to begin with. So having one down is minimized on a broad scale, but it's still costing money, right? Now, where it really hurts is if you're a small to medium manufacturer, right? And there could be a scenario where you're running at half capacity or you're completely shut down. An example that comes to mind is earlier this year, Ford had the F-150 crisis. They had a supplier's plant burned down. Now, I know that that's not a production down situation, but what it causes is a ripple effect. And now, while Ford is starting to gradually recover, they had to really decrease and almost shut down F-150s. That's the largest selling truck in the world. So, you can see what that impact is, even for a global manufacturer like Ford, right? So a predictive maintenance solution takes data from the production asset gathered by sensors and reports back to a manufacturer's maintenance department in real time to assess that asset's current health. So the asset can report ahead of time that a particular part is maybe going bad and will need replaced. And what that does is it gives your company advance notice and virtually eliminates a large portion of unplanned outages. So what do manufacturers gain by just doing this one simple thing that is a part of a broader smart manufacturing initiative? They reduce planned and unplanned downtime. They increase profitability. They're proactive and faster in their decision making. They increase their asset utilization, and they improve their manufacturing agility. But more importantly, though, the fact that by staying productive, a manufacturer can deliver on time and deliver quality at a time when customers along the chain demand that even more due to higher prices. So just some final thoughts as we start to wind down here. Tariffs are enacted and they're in motion, right? Manufacturers, you need to be in motion as well. You need to take a look at your operations and ask yourself some critical questions about quality and on-time delivery. Now, if you had to raise your prices significantly today, would you be prepared to justify that increase by offering higher service levels to your customers as a trade-off? And if so, are you efficient enough to deliver on those higher service levels? Use this as an opportunity to transform operations by starting small. As we mentioned, predictive maintenance is a tried and true use case from an IoT perspective. It's one piece of a broader smart manufacturing deployment, and it's a solid use case. And it's good to start with something like that as you head down that smart manufacturing path. And finally, leveraging smart manufacturing will pay dividends now and definitely in the future. So I want to thank you all for joining. We have some time left. I want to take that time to address a few questions that are being posed. And let me take a look here. Okay, here's a good one. All right. Question: besides predictive maintenance, what is another use case that can be established? That is a great question. So I think one, and we see a lot of this, is temperature control. So from a manufacturing standpoint, let's take food and beverage or even life sciences, right? In both of those, there's a common denominator of precise temperature in the warehouse, right? Or in the lab, right? So if I'm a food manufacturer, I've got some acceptable thresholds on temperature, and I can a solution that's going to really be attractive to me is the ability for a maintenance analyst or someone on the maintenance services or quality team to be alerted via analytics when a threshold that's been established has been violated. So we need to keep something at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a DC for frozen foods. And all of a sudden we're at 34. I need to react quickly because I could have some spoilage. In the lab, we might be running a clinical trial. And as those of you who've had maybe some experience in pharma know that those are, like all science experiments, even the ones that we did growing up in high school, those have to be controlled in a lot of different ways. And so being able to control temperature really is one way outside of the predictive maintenance use case that we talked about, where you can achieve that. I think we've got time for maybe one more question. Here's a good one. How would Sunflower approach an opportunity to help a manufacturer determine what to manage and become more efficient from a maintenance standpoint? Okay. All right. Thanks for that. So at the risk of oversimplifying and in the interest of time, what we would do first is we would engage the process by addressing current state, right? We want to look at current state. We want to determine what is the issue. Hear from the customer. What's the issue? And that takes us down a prescriptive path, right? So we determine that issue, and let's just say again, we'll go back to the predictive maintenance scenario. They have a machine that is going down. In fact, we are currently engaged with a prospect now that is a large manufacturer. They have a machine that will take a raw material and it will take it and turn it into a piece that will eventually, after going through 5 machines, will come out on the other end as a finished good. We asked them, if this first machine goes down, what happens? Well, if the first machine goes down, then it will be a ripple effect all the way down to the 5th machine, and that'll take a couple of hours. Okay, what does that cost, right? And so then we start to determine the cost of that. So what is the cost of that machine going down, right? And we talk about it in terms of labor hours, right? Labor hours in terms of additional pay for overtime to get back on track, right? Also, if you're a just-in-time manufacturer, I think those of you that are understand that there can be fines levied that are part of a service level agreement. So if I'm a just-in-time supplier and I go down and I don't have the backup inventory to ship to the manufacturer, I could be facing some heavy fines. So after we isolate what that pain costs, then we determine KPIs. So we start to measure, okay, what are the thresholds that are deemed acceptable and unacceptable? And then we take that information and potentially what we do is we pilot a solution and we try to focus on, one attribute, one KPI. And we will start to establish the analytics, start to establish the alerting mechanism that comes from the data that's received from the sensor on the asset. So that's really how we approach it. And again, over time, that scenario becomes better and better and better as it establishes algorithms based on historical data and based on the events that have been done in the past on the shop floor. So I hope that answers that effectively. So I do want to wrap up here, and I want to take the time to thank everybody for their investment in time today. These lunch and learns that we do are established for a reason. We like to do them quickly. We know that you're making a sacrifice during your day to join. And I'd like to ask you to please feel free to reach out to us here at Sunflower. Let us know if we can help you be proactive and responsive to any global economic changes that happen now or in the future. And I want to thank you all and wish you a great rest of your day.